Welcome to our deep dive into the life of Connie Francis, one of America's most iconic singers whose powerful voice and undeniable charm captured the hearts of millions in the late 1950s and early 1960s. In this video, we'll explore how her dazzling rise to stardom soon collided with personal hardships that tested her resilience in unimaginable ways. From her remarkable childhood talent to her heartbreaking struggles with mental health, join us as we uncover the story of a brilliant performer whose real-life drama goes far beyond the stage. Childhood. Connie Francis, born Concetta Rosa Maria Franco-Nero on December 12, 1937 in Newark, New Jersey, came from a proud Italian-American background. Her family's immigrant roots and strong work ethic shaped her earliest outlook on life. In many ways, that traditional upbringing set the tone for what would become a timeless American success story, though one undeniably marred by tragedy in later years. Her father, George Franco-Nero Sr., was originally from Calabria, Italy, and her mother, Ida, from Campania. They were part of a close-knit Italian-American community that placed tremendous emphasis on family loyalty, Catholic faith, and moral values. From a young age, Connie showed a profound aptitude for music. The mention of her father playing the concertina at social gatherings not only sets a charming old-world scene, but underscores the household environment in which Connie was raised. A place humming with music, festivity, and the desire to connect with people through song. George recognized that his daughter had been endowed with a naturally melodious and powerful voice, and this recognition turned into a very determined fatherly mission. He believed wholeheartedly in Connie's future success. The fact that Connie began lessons at age 3 on the accordion might seem extraordinary on its own, yet even more notable is how quickly her vocal talent stole the limelight from her instrumental skills. With local performances at community events and church socials, Connie refined her stage presence while still very young. Participation in these local gatherings gave her not just performance practice, but also unwavering confidence in front of an audience, an asset that would serve her well during televised appearances like Arthur Godfrey's Talent Scouts. Winning first place on that national television show in 1950 was a watershed moment. It was on Godfrey's urging that she adopted the name Connie Francis, a more Americanized version of her Italian last name, Franco-Nero. Even at this young age, Connie was still barely a teenager. She began to encounter the entertainment industry's penchant for rebranding and image shaping. This set the stage for the rest of her career, during which producers, record executives, and even her own father sought to steer her in directions they deemed best for her success. Connie's early life also provides an illuminating glimpse into just how driven she was. Far from being an ordinary teenage pastime, her forging of an identity card so she could perform in clubs underscores a fierce commitment to her craft. She refused to be pigeonholed into a child performer slot that would fade with time. Instead, she was determined to garner the attention of major labels. This hustle displayed both the hustle characteristic of mid-20th century show business and the supportive, if at times aggressive, push from her father. He saw stardom for her, and Connie, not wanting to let him down, gave it everything she had. A detail often overlooked is the environment she performed in during those early lounge gigs. It was not always glamorous. Many of these clubs were smoky, raucous spots where older, perhaps more seasoned entertainers performed risque jokes or bluesy tunes. Yet Connie's pure, powerful voice captivated audiences, a testament to her star potential. In these establishments, she learned not just to sing, but how to handle an unpredictable crowd, a skill that seasoned her for the variety show circuits and later the biggest concert halls in the country. From 1950 to 1954, Connie was a regular performer on Star Time, a youth-oriented variety program. This steady television exposure helped foster name recognition, bridging the gap between local recognition in New Jersey, New York clubs and a more nationwide fan base. Her presence on the small screen also likely contributed to her father's overarching sense of how the public perceived her. He remained protective, sometimes overly so, of her image, wanting her to be the all-American girl next door who could connect with average families across the country. This would become a recurring theme in Connie's life, the tension between paternal oversight and her own growing independence. Thus, by the time Connie Francis neared the age of 16, she had garnered more real-world stage experience than many professionals twice her age. This early start, while beneficial to her career, also foreshadowed a certain vulnerability. She was a minor operating in an adult environment where predators, temptations, and exploitative figures were commonplace. In many respects, she was thrust into an adult world overnight, responsible not only for her performance but also for how she conducted herself in the bustling, complex entertainment circles of New York, Las Vegas, and beyond. Family. The familial backdrop of Connie Francis's life is one of the defining elements of her story. While many entertainers have stage moms or dads, Connie's father, George Franconero Sr., took paternal oversight to another level. He acted not only as a kind of manager, but also as an unrelenting gatekeeper of his daughter's decisions, relationships, and image. This dynamic can be traced back to his early recognition that Connie's voice was a golden opportunity. The success that followed further emboldened him to remain deeply involved in every aspect of her life. It's essential to note that being the only daughter of a traditional Italian-American household during the mid-20th century meant there were immense expectations placed on Connie. Honor, family reputation, and moral conduct carried a lot of weight. George was a father determined to protect his daughter, both from the more unseemly corners of show business and from romantic entanglements he believed could harm her career. Over time, that protection morphed into control, with Connie frequently caught between her own aspirations or personal needs and her father's unyielding perspective on what was best for her. This overbearing nature of her father took on many forms throughout her life. One anecdote that is often recounted in relation to her family life involves a rumored romance with fellow singer Bobby Darin. The story goes that Connie fell deeply for Darin, but her father was so adamantly against the match, believing Darin was a poor prospect or might derail Connie's rise, that he reportedly chased Bobby Darin away from their home at gunpoint. Whether or not the details are embellished, the end result is clear. Her father's interference effectively prevented any chance of a lasting relationship between Connie and Darin. In fact, Connie would later recount in interviews that Bobby Darin might have been the one that got away. Her father's involvement took a far darker turn in 1983, when he had Connie admitted to a psychiatric hospital against her will. This decision, though perhaps partly motivated by a concern for her well-being, speaks to how controlling he remained, even as Connie entered her mid-40s. Instead of seeking a measured approach to address mental health issues, he utilized the most drastic measure, hospitalization, where she was forced to undergo treatments that would reshape her entire life, including her diagnosis of bipolar disorder. Another devastating family tragedy was the loss of Connie's younger brother, George Franconero Jr., who was a lawyer. He was murdered in a mafia-style slaying in 1981. This shocking event underscores the precarious environment that sometimes accompanies the intersection of fame, family connections, and local corruption. Details about exactly why he was targeted remain clouded in speculation, but the emotional toll it took on Connie was indisputable. Losing a sibling, especially one believed to have had a promising career in law and who might have offered her some emotional support, was heartbreaking. At a time when she needed stability, this new trauma accelerated her decline into depression and anxiety. Moreover, Connie's repeated miscarriages and failed marriages added layers of grief to her personal life. She was married multiple times. Some sources note 4 marriages, and none of these unions lasted. Partly, her father's interference is often cited as creating tension within her romantic relationships, along with Connie's hectic performing schedule that left little time for a traditional domestic life. The miscarriages especially highlight how she longed for a family of her own, a wish that remained tragically unfulfilled. All of these factors shape the Connie Francis that the public saw in the early 1980s, a star whose once meteoric career was stalled, whose personal life was in turmoil, and whose father still held significant sway over her decisions. It's in examining her family life that we see the root of many of her emotional struggles. While the love was undeniably there, so too was a sense of suffocation and tragedy that overshadowed her achievements. Connie Francis's career trajectory encapsulates the shifting tides of American popular culture in the mid-20th century. She burst onto the scene in the late 1950s, an era that had just begun to embrace rock and roll while still remaining loyal to big band vocal stylings. In this transitional landscape, Connie's style, combining the timeless warmth of a classic vocalist with a youthful pop-friendly charm, allowed her to stand out among both older and younger audiences. Who's Sorry Now, 1958, was the pivotal record that catapulted her to stardom, a reinvention of a 1920s standard that showcased her ability to take a song from her father's era and infuse it with a modern, teenage-friendly vibe. This track's success was aided by the crucial timing of a televised endorsement. Dick Clark played the song on American Bandstand, and it ignited a surge of record sales, quickly topping the charts. From there, Connie went on to produce an incredible string of hits that kept her name at the forefront of American pop music. Consider, for instance, her track Stupid Cupid, which was penned by the famed songwriting duo Neil Sedaka and Howard Greenfield. This upbeat tune further cemented her image as the quintessential teenage sweetheart. Another major success was Lipstick on Your Collar, which soared in popularity thanks to its catchy melody and teen-centric lyrics. Songs like Mama, appealing to the sentimentality of multi-generational audiences, demonstrated Connie's versatility in singing more traditional or older-leaning material. Indeed, she was bridging gaps between pop, rock, and older standards, a testament to her vocal adaptability and her father's canny sense of what might sell. By the early 1960s, Connie Francis was a household name. She appeared not only on stage but also in films, capturing the youthful spirit of the era in productions like Where the Boys Are, 1960, which has become something of a classic spring break film. This particular movie and the title song resonated with a generation of teenagers daydreaming about romance and freedom on Florida's beaches. The film gave Connie a broader audience, as her fresh face and sincere performing style translated naturally to the silver screen. During this period, marketing tie-ins were rampant. As the text notes, her name was placed on countless products, sweaters, diaries, charm bracelets, predating the now common idea of music artists branching out into merchandise. She even wrote an advice book targeting teen girls, an endeavor that underlined her role as a relatable figure who had gone from unknown youngster to star performer. International success is a crucial chapter in Connie's career. She was among a select group of American pop stars, alongside artists like Elvis Presley, who actively recorded in multiple languages to reach global audiences. Her command of Italian, Spanish, and Yiddish, and occasionally other languages, for specialized albums, such as Connie Francis Sings Italian Favorites and Connie Francis Sings Jewish Favorites, broadened her appeal beyond the typical American pop star of the time. Not only did this strategy boost her record sales internationally, but it also endeared her to ethnic communities within the United States, many of whom cherished an entertainer willing to sing in their ancestral tongue. This approach was especially resonant for Italian Americans, who saw in Connie a representative of their own culture ascending to mainstream stardom. In the mid-1960s, the musical landscape changed dramatically with the British invasion led by the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, and other rock bands that captured the imagination of a younger, rebellious audience. Artists like Connie Francis, who had thrived in the pre-Beatles era, found themselves grappling with how to retain their fan base amid drastically shifting musical tastes. While her chart success in the U.S. tapered, she did continue to tour, record, and appear on television throughout the 1970s, leveraging her existing fan base. During this decade, lounge and cabaret performances became vital to her livelihood. Her name was still a draw, particularly in Las Vegas, Atlantic City, and top clubs nationwide, but the days of unstoppable chart dominance were largely behind her. Nevertheless, the longevity of her career is remarkable, and it underscores the strength of her talent. While other singers of the 1950s quickly faded, Connie Francis managed to remain relevant for years. She cultivated loyal fans who followed her, not only for the music, but for the personal connection they felt with her story. By then, her life story had become an integral part of her brand, especially after the tragedies and personal struggles began to unfold. Ironically, these hardships would eventually overshadow her professional accomplishments in the media, leading many to ask, what happened to Connie Francis? Scandal. The 1974 assault in Westbury, New York, remains one of the most devastating chapters of Connie Francis's life. The raw, brutal nature of this crime not only inflicted immediate physical harm, but fundamentally altered her worldview. For someone whose entire career had been built upon connecting with audiences, often in hotels, clubs, and strange cities, the assault shattered any sense of safety she might have felt on the road. In that instant, the places that had served as her second home, hotels after performances, became sites of paralyzing fear. Her subsequent lawsuit and the substantial settlement from the hotel were significant for multiple reasons. First, it highlighted corporate responsibility, or lack thereof, for ensuring the safety of guests. Connie's claim of negligence forced hotel owners and chains across the industry to reevaluate security measures, from better locks to improved surveillance. In essence, Connie used her traumatic experience to push for higher standards of guest protection, which would eventually benefit countless travelers, whether they recognized her contribution or not. Nevertheless, legal vindication could not fully heal the psychological impact. PTSD, anxiety, and depression enveloped Connie in the wake of the assault. Reports from that era suggest she became deeply fearful of being alone, often refusing to leave her house. She had trouble sleeping, and when she did, nightmares of the event haunted her. This was happening at a time when mental health care, especially for assault survivors, was far less sophisticated or sensitive than it is today. The public stigma around rape was also more pronounced, leaving her isolated in her trauma and hesitant to speak freely about it. Her mental anguish led her in and out of psychiatric hospitals for years. This was not a linear journey of improvement, but rather a cyclical process. She would attempt to resume performances and occasionally manage to give stirring shows reminiscent of her heyday, only to fall back into crippling anxiety or depression. This erratic pattern harmed her professional reputation, with some promoters labeling her unreliable. Fans, unaware or only partially aware of the gravity of her situation, might have wondered why her once consistent stage presence had become so sporadic. Connie's decision in 1977 to undergo plastic surgery and the disastrous results that temporarily damaged her voice further compounded her struggles. For a singer of her caliber, and for someone whose voice had become her defining feature, any threat to her vocal cords was catastrophic, both emotionally and financially. At a time when she was already vulnerable from the assault, her inability to perform at her accustomed level proved devastating. Despite these challenges, Connie demonstrated remarkable courage even in her darkest moments. She publicly acknowledged the assault, sued the hotel, and demanded accountability. Doing so placed a spotlight on the widespread problem of sexual violence in an era when many survivors felt unable to speak out. In the process, she emerged as a reluctant yet powerful figure in the movement toward holding businesses accountable and improving victim support. The media, unfortunately, often honed in on the sensational aspects of the story. Headlines about the assault, combined with rumors regarding her mental health, overshadowed the significance of her earlier achievements. For fans who once knew her as the vivacious, chart-topping sweetheart, the transformation was jarring. It raises a broader question about how society treats entertainers who suffer personal tragedies. Instead of rallying around them with compassion, the public sometimes becomes wrapped up in the lurid details or the drama of the scandal, forgetting these stars are real people coping with profound trauma marriage. By the time Connie Francis reached her late 20s and early 30s, she had already experienced multiple romantic entanglements, some short-lived, some more serious, that ended in heartbreak. Although historically many pop stars keep aspects of their romantic life private, Connie's personal dramas were, in many respects, an open secret. Despite her worldwide fame, she repeatedly found herself in emotionally challenging or incompatible partnerships that culminated in divorce. Details about these marriages reveal a pattern wherein Connie sought solace or stability, yet encountered conflict. Her father's strong influence played a crucial role. Many who knew Connie suggested that her father's disapproval often overshadowed her own feelings. She might, for instance, have had genuine affection for a suitor, only to see the relationship crumble under the weight of paternal objections or meddling. This dynamic, reminiscent of stage parents, ironically did not fade when she became an adult. Her success only seemed to reinforce his belief that he needed to micromanage her decisions to preserve her career. Adding to the heartbreak were Connie's 2 miscarriages, tragedies that robbed her of the motherhood she reportedly longed for. While she may have harbored a desire for a more conventional family life, fate appeared to place insurmountable hurdles in front of that dream. Each pregnancy loss deepened her grief, compounding her sense of loneliness and disappointment. When viewed alongside her already turbulent life, her unstoppable schedule, the demands of show business, and the paternal interference, it's no wonder her mental and emotional strain continued to mount. These marriage failures and miscarriages also must be understood in the context of the era. During the 1950s and 1960s, a woman of Connie's fame was expected to handle her personal life in a manner that would not disillusion her fan base. Consequently, public knowledge of her miscarriages and relationship struggles was often minimized or sanitized. This secrecy, while common at the time, deprived Connie of the open support that might have alleviated some of her sorrow. Her personal heartbreak was thus internalized, a silent burden that ate away at her sense of self and battered her emotional well-being, fueling the cycles of depression that would soon dominate her life. Other relationships and mental health struggles. After enduring the assault, legal battles, and personal heartbreaks, Connie Francis attempted to reinvigorate her career in 1981. This comeback was intended to recall her triumphant hits and remind the public why they had fallen in love with her voice in the first place. Yet, the trauma she had suffered was not something she could easily compartmentalize. Following a brief spark of interest from fans and concert promoters, it became evident that her deeper mental health struggles were far from resolved. In 1983, Connie's father forcibly admitted her to a psychiatric hospital, a controversial move that underscores the persistent hold he had over her life. Diagnosed with bipolar disorder, Connie finally had a clinical explanation for the drastic mood swings and chemical imbalances she had likely been experiencing for years. This diagnosis, while painful, could have been a step toward healing if only it had been handled with empathy and careful management. Unfortunately, the stigma attached to mental health issues, especially in the 1980s, and the complexities of her father's domination made the situation more complicated. Once released, Connie grappled with the challenge many people with bipolar disorder face: consistently adhering to medication. Mood stabilizers and other psychiatric drugs can have side effects that some patients find intolerable: weight gain, lethargy, or emotional blunting. For a performer used to the high energy demands of the stage, these side effects could feel like a creative straitjacket. Consequently, her commitment to medication wavered, and each lapse risked sending her spiraling into mania or depression. The series of incidents described, refueling a jet on her own, brandishing a broken glass at a police officer, demonstrate the impulsivity and grandiose or paranoid thinking that can mark severe manic or psychotic episodes. Her suicide attempt by overdose and eventual shock treatments, electroconvulsive therapy or ECT, highlight how dire her mental state became. ECT, though often misunderstood, can be an effective last resort treatment for resistant depression. In Connie's case, it was emblematic of the severity of her condition and her desperation for relief. During these years, Connie also suffered from paranoid delusions, at times believing she was the focus of conspiracies involving the White House, or even thinking she was channeling the Holy Spirit. These delusions point towards psychotic features that can accompany bipolar disorder when unmedicated or poorly managed. It is both tragic and courageous that she eventually began to regain stability, thanks in part to animal-assisted therapy, her new dog therapy, and the realization that medication was essential for her to function. Her return to the stage at a sold-out show was symbolic, not just of her desire to reclaim her status as a performer, but of her resilience and her fans' unwavering loyalty. By this point, those who came to see her were often middle-aged adults who had grown up listening to her hits in the late 1950s and early 1960s. For them, seeing Connie Francis again was a chance to revisit memories of youth, freedom, and innocence. For Connie, it was a chance to prove to herself and to the public that she was not defined solely by her tragedies. Music could still be her lifeline, a method of connecting with a world that too often felt chaotic and cruel. Current life. Nowadays, Connie Francis still carries on as a cherished figure in American pop culture, finding ways to stay connected with fans and celebrate her enduring musical legacy. She occasionally appears at special events and benefit concerts, offering heartfelt performances that remind everyone of the warmth and power in her classic hits. Even in her 80s, she radiates a spirited presence, using social media and interviews to express her gratitude for the unwavering support she has received throughout her life. Beyond the spotlight, Connie devotes time to various charitable causes, including organizations aimed at uplifting those who face challenges similar to ones she once overcame. Though she does not tour extensively, each rare appearance is a touching moment for longtime admirers, serving as a testament to her resilience and her unshakable bond with the generations of listeners who grew up on her music. Through triumphs, tragedies, and a spirit that refused to be silenced, Connie Francis carved out a legacy that still resonates with fans across the world. Her life exemplifies the heights one can reach through talent and determination, while also revealing the fragility of fame in the face of profound personal trials. We hope this glimpse into her incredible journey offers a deeper understanding of the woman behind the unforgettable voice. Thank you for watching.